Are we ready? Are we rolling? I think we're rolling. All right. There we go. Good day, everyone. It's John here from the Ohazassu Podcast, and welcome to episode number 75. My goodness, it's 3/4 away to a century, and we're going strong here on the Ohazassu Podcast. Thanks to everyone's support. Thanks to everyone on X who's been with us since the beginning, and also anyone who's new on YouTube here who has subscribed to our channel. Thank you very much for joining us. I'm John, your host, originally from Sydney, Australia. I currently live in Nagoya, Japan, and I podcast here on the Ohazassu Podcast about life here, the language, and various topics that seem to pop up all the time. There's never a shortage of things to talk about. So on today's show, we'll be talking about a couple of those. And also at the end of the show, we've always got something called Word of the Day, which I introduce so that we can level up our Japanese one word at a time here on the Ohazassu Podcast. So let's get right into it. Without delay. It's a light episode today, by the way. Nothing too serious in today's episode, just a couple of chit-chatty topics, just so we can cover the usual kind of useful info that we come across over here on the channel. So first up, I want to quickly talk about international phone calls from Japan. So this comes up every now and then for me, and I actually tweeted about this or posted about this on X last week when the opportunity arose. And it's about calling overseas. So I need to call Australia every now and then. And this is for official things. Things like a few people mentioned in the replies that who needs to call a landline these days? And I'm the same. I almost never need to call a landline. I communicate with friends and family in Australia or overseas in other countries with apps like WhatsApp or Messenger or Line and so on, like most of you do. However, I'm sure you're all familiar with those instances where you need to contact something like a bank or an insurance company or some kind of, tax-related issue, and you need to get in touch with some kind of an official institution back where you're originally from. Now, with this kind of situation, unfortunately, I'm not sure about how it works with America or in the UK. But in Australia, we have these things called toll-free numbers. Like they usually start with 13 or 1300, 1800, that kind of thing. And these numbers don't work from overseas. They're intended for people calling from within Australia. So with this kind of situation, we get stuck when we're overseas because we can't dial the number. So what you usually need to do is go to the official website of the institution concerned and find the number that starts with +61, or in your case, the country code that you're trying to call. So in that situation, obviously you need to pay for the call, and there are normal kind of telephone companies here in Japan, obviously. So I'm with Rakuten Mobile and I could call overseas. However, I will be charged at quite a high rate, relatively speaking, if I were to call an overseas number. So obviously the pricing will vary depending on which carrier you're with. You might be with NTT or AU or Rakuten or Y Mobile, SoftBank, or the various carriers here in Japan, and the pricing will differ depending on who you're with. But when you're calling these kinds of institutions overseas, I don't know if I'm just unlucky, but I'm going to take an educated guess here and say that most of us suffer with very long waiting times when we call these kinds of places. And I have been caught out in the past. I used my regular carrier to call Australia once, and I was on hold for approximately 30 minutes. That's 30 minutes. And even after all that time, I still had to wait. So I gave up and I hung up. And I think I paid something like $20 for those 30 odd minutes. And what a waste of money, really. So I'm going to quickly go over the options that are available to you if you're in Japan, or even if you're in another country. I'm sure these options are available to you as well. And they're discounted phone rates for calling landlines back where you're trying to reach. So in my case, I actually use a service that's offered by a company called Viber. That's Viber. And I don't know when that happened, but I think they are owned by Rakuten now, and I don't think that was the case initially. But I came to know of Viber because family back home uses that to communicate with me as a texting app. For some reason, someone got them onto it, and so I need to have that app on my phone in order to communicate with them. But Viber actually has a package where you can pay for calling overseas landlines from your mobile phone. And I've used it a couple of times in the past in these kinds of situations, and it has been an excellent service. It's easy to cancel, and it's easy to set up. And the call quality has been fantastic every time. So with this service, all you need to do is go to the page on your phone, and there is a little section where you can set up this feature. And you just basically, it connects, in my situation, it connects to the credit card that I've got hooked up to my Google account, and it automatically does the payment there. So I don't need to sort of enter any new information. It's all done automatically. And it's a monthly subscription. So, and you can cancel it at any time, which is fantastic, right? So I set it up. I pay 440 yen for a month of unlimited phone calls to Australia. I'm not sure if that includes mobile phones, but I usually don't need it for mobile phones. It's always for landlines. So I buy that for a month, and off I go. And I call whoever I need to call, and I literally don't care even if they keep me on hold for 5 hours because it's unlimited. And that works great for me. But I was curious to know if there are any other services out there, and I asked people on X, and a few of you recommended Skype as a service. And I had used this in the past, a very long time ago, and I noticed that it wasn't unlimited calls. It was charged by the minute. It is quite competitive. It's only, I just checked before I started recording this episode, and I think it was about 3 or 4 yen a minute. I'll check and I'll put that here. If you're watching the video, I'll put up the current price here. But it sounds cheap, but if you need to use it for hours and hours in a month, it actually doesn't work out to be as competitive as the Viber plan, according to my calculations. Your mileage may vary. But in any case, it's still very competitive, and it's going to be cheaper than your regular mobile phone carrier if you're going to be calling for extended periods of time. So that's something I quickly wanted to go over. Just be careful with the Skype credits. They do get cancelled after a number of days. I can't remember how many days that was, but a couple of you out there mentioned that the credits become, I can't remember the exact wording that Microsoft used. It was a little bit sneaky. It was something like it gets cancelled or deactivated, but it makes it sound as though you've lost that money forever. However, you just go back into your account, and there's apparently a little link or something that you click on, and those credits become active again. So you don't actually lose your money. I don't know why they do this. Maybe it's some kind of a security measure, or I don't know. If you're from Microsoft or you know about this, by all means, feel free to drop a comment below and share the information with us, because I'm kind of curious to know why they do something that's so annoying, actually. But yeah, that's all I have to share about the calling overseas with sort of competitive rates. If you have any sort of extra tips or advice that you want to offer or share with the community here, by all means, please share it with us down below in the comments. If you're on YouTube or if you're on X, you can comment below this link from where you're watching the video. Okay. Next up, I want to talk about the convenience of the Japanese language. A lot of people, including myself, have gone on about how difficult and how annoying the Japanese language can be to learn, especially when it comes to kanji and kanji readings. We all make fun of it every now and then because it can drive you insane. The number of readings for kanji and all the different things you can learn about them, it just never seems to end. And to be honest, as I mentioned in a previous episode, that's actually what drew me to Japanese in the first place. I was fascinated with how different and how unique the whole thing was. The script being one of those things. The grammar is also quite different, but the script is incredibly different. And those things that make it different and difficult for us actually make it a very convenient script to write in. Now, I specifically want to talk about one kanji words. They're kind of more like abbreviations. And I'm going to list these here probably. I'm going to mention the ones that come to mind, and I'll put up a whole list here on the side of the screen for you as well. But let's quickly go over a couple of them, and I might discuss these in more detail in a future episode, or maybe if you want to bring up some more that you know that you use, feel free to put them in the comments or share them on X. And they are things like man, as in full. So when you see a full car park, it'll say mansha. And mansha means it's full. And they'll usually just write the one character, and that will be man, M-A-N, and that means full. If it's empty, they write the kanji for kara, right? A lot of you will know kara from the word karate, which means empty hand, the martial art. Hiya! And that is empty. And so instead of writing the word empty, like in English, we would have to write empty, right? We'd use 5 characters to write the word empty, and we'd use 4 characters to write the word full. In Japanese, they just write the one character, right? Empty or full. There is a whole bunch of others, which a few of them will come to mind right now. But for example, push and pull on a door. They'll just write the one kanji for push and pull. I'll put those here. Another one is prohibited. If something is prohibited, for example, no smoking, you'll see the kanji for prohibited, right? Which is this one. If something is, what's another one that you see? Discount. If something is on a discount, you'll see this kanji, and this means that it's on sale, or some kind of a discount has been applied. So there are all these different kanji that come up. Another one is open and close, like this. And you'll see these everywhere, and there'll just be one kanji, and it'll mean a whole word. And I'm sure a lot of you more advanced learners of Japanese, or people who are fluent in Japanese, will know about Yoji Jukugo and the 4 character combinations, which explain entire concepts and proverbs and things like that in Japanese. And in those situations, with as little as 4 characters, you can explain something that might take a few sentences in English. So I just wanted to quickly go over that and share, because we all do, including myself, we all kind of whinge about how difficult the Japanese script can be, especially for us learners. But there is a flip side to that. And it can also make things very convenient in the Japanese language. Okay, so that's that topic done. Lastly, this is just an observation, and I see this come up every now and then on the feeds, and that is the number of stairs in Japan. I'm actually really curious to know what you guys think about this as well. I've noticed that there are a hell of a lot more stairs in Japan compared to back in Australia. And I've heard this from a few different people from a number of different countries. In Japan, no matter where you go, there's actually just, sometimes it feels like there are too many stairs and not enough escalators and elevators, especially at places like subways and train stations. Now, I don't know about you, but if you're traveling with a 20-kilo suitcase, it can be really annoying to be presented with a 100 step staircase after a 15-hour flight, you know. And obviously, if you look for it and you ask the station master for it, someone will obviously guide you to the closest elevator or escalator. But in some cases, it can be so troublesome to get to that elevator that you'll just be like, you know, you'll sigh and you'll be, and you'll carry that 20-kilo suitcase all the way up to the top of the stairs, and you'll huff and puff all the way to your hotel. But really, I think this is something which contributes to our health as well in Japan. I feel like my legs are more fit when I'm in Japan, as opposed to back in Sydney, in Australia, where everything's kind of flat and there are escalators and elevators. Obviously, stairs exist, but I just feel like there's, a significantly larger number of stairs. There are more stairs in Japan by a long shot. The same can be said, I think, for walking. I feel like we walk a lot more in Japan, especially in the city. I think if you were to compare the Japanese countryside to Australia, maybe it's about the same, because if you're using a car in Japan, you're probably not going to walk as much. But if you're in a city in Japan, I think you are going to be walking a lot, especially if you're in a place like Tokyo. Whenever I go to Tokyo, I can easily clock 10,000 steps in a day. It's like maybe more like 12,000. And that's without trying. Here in Nagoya, I notice it's more about 7,000 or 8,000 a day, which is still a lot more than I'd get in Australia. In Australia, it's more like about 5,000. But I realize that it can depend on where you're at, what kind of lifestyle you have, and that kind of thing. But generally speaking, in my experience, we walk a lot more here in Japan and we have a lot more stairs. But I'm curious to know what your observations are and if you have anything to say about the number of stairs here in Japan, because it's something that I have heard a few times, and I think it does contribute to our health. A lot of people here walk a lot more, and overseas, not as much. So does that contribute to, better health overall, better fitness, that kind of thing? Let me know. Another one I've also noticed, by the way, while we're on this topic, is people who ride bicycles. I've noticed that even people who seem overweight, for example, here in Japan, they will be cycling on a regular basis. You'll see a lot of, almost people from every kind of demographic cycling. It's incredible. And back in Australia, cycling was more for like a sport. You don't really see it as a regular form of transport in Australia. So that's another observation, I think, which belongs in this category. But let me know what you think. Anyway, that's all for today's episode. Like I said, a very light one today, nothing too serious. And of course, we have word of the day. And today's word of the day is connected, of course, to one of the topics we've spoken about. And today's word is kake hodai. Kake hodai. And you might know, if you're familiar with words like tabe hodai and nomi hodai, they are all you can drink and all you can eat. When you go to like a Japanese yakiniku place, a barbecue. But kake hodai is unlimited calls on a phone. And I was talking about this the other day and saying how tabe hodai is all you can eat. But when it comes to phone calls, we don't usually say all you can call. We just say unlimited phone calls. So the translation in English can sometimes be a little bit different depending on what we're talking about. But it can mean unlimited or all you can, blah, blah, blah. So that's today's word of the day, kake hodai. That will be on our X feed, as always, with a little graphic showing the writing for that and also the pronunciation and that kind of thing. And I always put a little hashtag on there as well, Ohazassu WOTD. So if you want to see a full list of our word of the day words, you can just click on that hashtag on X and you should be able to see them come up beautifully on your timeline. Okay, that's all for today. Thank you very much for tuning in. And I hope everyone is enjoying the fantastic autumn weather. And I wish you a lovely weekend coming up. Anyway, I'll see you at the next episode. Bye for now.